to the Point of Impact podcast with Rick McDaniel. Thanks for joining us today. Get ready to be inspired and motivated to live a high-impact life. Now, here's Rick.
Welcome to the Point of Impact podcast. I'm Rick McDaniel. Thanks for joining us today. And today we're going to do what I like to call a one-off episode. If you've not been a listener before, and certainly if you have, you know what this is. But I'll be like in a series, like right now, doing this series of episodes on kind of lessons learned in life, and actually going to go into a little more detail next week about why I'm doing that. I haven't really gotten into that, and some people have asked, you know, what's sort of the motivation behind this? What's this all about? And I'm going to just share some quotes and some people from Muhammad Ali to Adlai Stevenson, the former politician, to Billy Graham on, you know, what it's like, you know, sort of what you learn at 20 and what you learn at 50 and life experiences. So I'll get back to that next week because I've got a lot more, and I want to do one next week on the positive side after doing the more negative weasels, haters, and scoundrels. And man, I'm hearing from people about that one. But I'll get back on the more positive side next week. But today is Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's. And I thought, you know, maybe I should do an episode, Valentine's-oriented episode. And I have an article that came out today on Fox News called "The One Thing You Can Do to Supercharge Your Love Life This Valentine's Day." And that is an article, a fairly brief, and, you know, it's not super long, 700 words or something, article that, you know, you could read in 5 minutes, probably, something like that. And I'd like to kind of expand on that content today for our 30-minute podcast. So if you want it in writing, if you want it kind of summarized, if you would, then by all means, go to the foxnews.com website and read that article, share that article, get it out there today, because that is something that could be very helpful and certainly very shareable. You could also, of course, say, hey, if you want to hear a longer, more in-depth discussion about this, then here's the podcast episode, and you can listen to this. So you kind of have your choice today. I have done lots of messages on relationships throughout my career and ministry. Lots. I have never done one on this. I've even done Valentine's once, because Valentine's would sometimes fall like on a Sunday or something. But I've never done it on this particular idea, this one thing that you can do. I've shared lots of things. I've shared lots of insights, and I stand by all of them. I mean, I think they're all very helpful. But this just kind of came to me, and I thought I should hone in on this for Valentine's Day, because I think it's a really, really powerful concept. And that's why I use the word supercharge. You know, this one thing can supercharge, and it really can supercharge. And so I thought, why don't I take an episode, take a break from what we've been talking about and sort of lessons learned in life, and dispense some wisdom in this regard in terms of your love life and Valentine's and all those sorts of things. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And then next week, we'll get back to those lessons learned, and I'll talk a little bit more again why I want to do that. And then we'll do positive mindset stuff so you can, because man, that's so important. And I really, really do want to always talk about that whenever I have the opportunity, because there's no way you can really have the kind of life you want to have without the right mindset. But that's for next week. But today, because it's Valentine's Day, I thought, why don't we just focus in on an interesting way, a unique way maybe, to think about your love life, and particularly what could you do to supercharge it. So what's the one thing you can do? So this all really starts last Valentine's Day, a year ago. a year ago, my wife and I, we flew to Mayakoba, Mexico for that Valentine's Day week. Valentine's Day last year was on a Wednesday, and skipped a day from Thursday, and now it's on Friday this year. And so when we got to the resort, I had seen these pictures of like dinner on the beach, kind of concept. And so I wanted to do it as a surprise. So when my wife was, walking around looking at the lobby or whatever, I after I checked this in, instead of just saying I'm checked in, let's go, I slid over to the concierge and I said, hey, what about this Valentine's dinner on the beach? And he said, well, I said, are you going to have something like for everybody, or, could we just have some private thing? So we had this discussion, and he said, well, listen, let me look into it, and let me, get back with you on it. And so he looked into it and he said, yeah, we can do that. We can do it. And I have to tell you now, because this is important, and this is the stuff you could never get into in an article. So, and this is what's nice about this podcast. I can just go into all kinds of little fun details that I think are interesting and kind of flesh out the story a little bit more. And here's one of many, and that is that he did not tell me any kind of particulars. And I have to say, I'm the kind of guy that is interested in the details. And I believe that attention to detail is important in terms of a success strategy. I'll actually talk about that in a few weeks when I do an episode on excellence, another life lesson, and the impact of excellence on your life. And part of excellence is attention to detail. So it's kind of strange for me to not have really gone into detail with him about what all was going to be involved in this happening. And that's important for this story, and you'll see why in just a second. So basically, he's like, there's this at the southern end of the beach area is like, that's where we'll be. So at the other end of the beach is where they did like the water sports, and then they had the places with all of the chairs and the umbrellas and all that stuff. And then at the far end of the beach is the least busy, and so that's where they said, hey, just show up 6 o'clock Valentine's evening, and we'll be ready for you. All right, great. So we had a good time I think we flew down on Monday. And Tuesday, did some of the water sports stuff. And I said, hey, to my wife, I said, got something special for you for Valentine's. And so I told her, again, the knowledge of what I knew. So we get there. And I was like, wow, this is really something. There was like a little gazebo, like a little wooden structure open, on all sides, and even the top, the ceiling, if you would, had like these beams running across it and down, and there were like these like hearts hanging down, and there was some lights. I didn't really notice at first, but later when it turned dark, I certainly did, kind of hanging down. There was a table and 2 chairs. It's like a dozen roses sitting in the middle of the table. And then to the right, there was this big, and I mean big, it had to be like 4 feet high and probably like 6 feet long sign. And it was, I heart you, like I heart you, like I love you. And that was there too. So it's like, wow, this is not just a table, not just like restaurant or something, a lot more than that. So, it was like, all right. And it was a beautiful night weather-wise, looking out at the ocean, and they're bringing us our food, and I mean, it was magical. And then as the sun went down and it got darker, that sign lit up. And the lights came on, like on the top of this gazebo thing. And it was like, wow, this is, really nice and romantic. And then when it came time for dessert, this giant, 6 foot tall Care Bear is what I would call it. Like this big, mascot with a big heart on, the stomach, and was, red and pink, comes walking up and puts, this sparkler thing in, the middle of where the roses were, which just starts shooting up into the air, and gives us the dessert and wants to have hugs and everything. We took a picture with my wife. It's, pretty hilarious in my opinion. It was funny as anything, but I was like a full blown, love mascot or whatever. So it was really something. It was just like a memorable night, like an unforgettable night. And my wife was like, this is so great and so special. But here's the thing. I started dating my wife when I was in high school. So we've had a lot of Valentines. We've had a lot of different Valentines. We've celebrated Valentines at, nice restaurants wherever we lived at the time. And we've lived a number of years here in Richmond, Virginia. We've gone to places. Sometimes a few years ago, I was doing some stuff down in Florida, and my wife came with me, and then we celebrated Valentine's down there, actually at the beach, but not on the beach, but at a hotel there. And through the years, we've taken some special Valentine's trips, and so we've done a lot of different things. And I think in the article I said something like we've been to some stunning places and had some special meals, and that sums it up pretty well. Yeah, it's been really been some really, really good ones and some very romantic ones. But here's the thing. Never did this. Never, ever in all these Valentine's celebrations ever had dinner on the beach, beautiful weather, beautiful scenery, and, this whole I love you sign. And again, when it turned dark and the light and the sign lit up too, and it was just really, it was really something. It was really special. It was something that was a first, like something new that we hadn't done before. And that was great. The night was great. That whole trip was great. There was one little not so great thing that happened where we got on this tour, and the thing was just totally off the rails. It was almost like a tour / Uber or something, like this van is dropping people off, and the whole schedule got knocked out, and to the point where we were finished with one thing. We're supposed to go to one of these cenotes, which is like these holes in the ground that are filled with water. It comes all the way back from the asteroid that hit Earth that caused the Ice Age, when that hit in Mexico in the Yucatan Peninsula. And that initial hit created these holes throughout that area in Mexico that then filled up with water. So there's hundreds of these cenotes all over. Anyway, we're supposed to go visit one of them, and I'm looking at my watch, and I'm like, there's no way, that we're going to get back in time if we go and now do this and then still have to drive back. Plus, I'm not really interested in then doing some sort of crazy pickup thing where the people we dropped off at the beach, we have to go pick up. So we had to call an audible and get our own way back and sort of pay extra, if you would. Whatever. It was a great trip. One little whoopsies there. The resort was beautiful. It was great. So, doing something we haven't done before. And the more I've reflected on that, that is where I have come up with this idea that there's one thing that you can do that will supercharge your love life, that will keep your love life going strong, and that's doing something new. As I'm traveling around the country sharing my greater message which is a message or a sermon that I do in churches. There's also a greater keynote message for like conference or business settings. And now there's actually a greater weekend or a greater Sunday where I can do something in the morning for a church in terms of speaking, and then come back in the evening and we do like a leadership training thing, which is really great. This is a question that I keep asking everyone whenever I speak. When's the last time you did something for the first time? And I would say that's the question. When's the last time you did something for the first time? In other words, when's the last time you did something new in terms of your relationship? You're married, however long you've been married, you may have kids. When's the last time you did something for the first time? If you're going to keep your love life strong, you have to do new things. When couples are dating, they do a lot of new things. In fact, their dates are nothing but new things, new things, new things, getting to know each other, doing fun stuff. But it's amazing how what happens then is that we fall into a routine and the focus shifts to job, the kids, and before you know it, days become months, become years, and nothing new is ever done. When's the last time you did something the first time? Can't even remember. What's the one thing that could supercharge your love life? Doing something new. New fun experiences become like a distant memory. And here's what's really dangerous about that. The romantic relationship can turn into like a business partnership. It's just like, we're partners in this business called the McDaniel family, and we're just running the business, and we're taking the kids around, and we're working our jobs, and we're going to church, and we're visiting with our friends and family, and we're doing all this stuff. And it's just like running it. Part of the greater message is greater relationships. And a greater relationship results in a new level. You move to a higher level, a newer level. And for a relationship, a romantic relationship, that means a deeper and more passionate love. And this comes by keeping things fresh, by doing new things, by purposely breaking out of the mold. And this requires intentionality and effort. It does not just happen. You know what does just happen? Things get stale and boring. That's what just happens. Now, this may not sound very romantic, but I'm going to say it, and I've said it at every wedding that I've ever done for couples, which is you have to work hard on your relationship. And in terms of a greater relationship, you have to work hard to bring your relationship to a higher level. It will not just go to a higher level on its own. It won't. In fact, left unattended, it will do the exact opposite. It will go down, not up. If your marriage is not what you want it to be right now, if your love life and your romance is like almost on life support, I guarantee you that the reason for that is because there just has not been anything new. You're not doing new things. You become more like roommates than lovers. I mean, that's just the hard, cold facts. And before you get mad at me for saying it, just be honest with yourself and ask yourself, is that true? And if you don't know if it is or not, then talk to your spouse and see what he or she says about it. At the beginning of the year, I met with a group of business owners and executives, and we were going over their goals in a variety of areas, like career and spiritual and health and financial, and another one was relationships. And every single guy, it was men, happened to be there, and every single one of them said something about making their marriage better. A couple guys actually used the same term, I want to be more present, which I think is a really good goal. When you own your own business, when you're an executive, you have a lot of responsibility, it's hard to be present because the job, the business can be very consuming. So if you wanted to say it the way I would say it, they wanted to have a greater relationship with their wife. That's what they were really getting at. How can we move to a greater relationship and move to a higher level? So I was very encouraged by hearing that. So I just asked them, I said, what do you guys have planned for Valentine's Day? Which at that time was probably about 5 weeks away, because this was at the beginning, not right at the beginning of the year, but like within like the first week, So I'm like, what do you guys got planned? So I just, looking around the room, and I'm not getting any answers at all. Come to find out, no one had made any plans. So, in other words, the desire was there. Like, I want this to be a greater year. I want 2025 to be a greater year. And I want it to be greater in my relationship with my wife, but the effort was not put in. Planning takes work. It takes time. I know all about it because I'm the guy that plans all this stuff all the time. My wife's never planned a Valentine's, never planned a vacation or trip. And I know firsthand how much I just finished the work of putting my next trip together. And it is a lot of work, but it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth the effort. Doing something new. Now, doing something new means different things to different people. My wife and I recently went on a hot air balloon ride in Napa Valley in California. That was the first time we'd ever done that. That was fun. We liked it. You may say, oh, that's something I'd like to do. We were supposed to do it in Albuquerque, New Mexico one time, and something happened. That's a long story. Really, let's just say I got a call from one of our kids, and that changed things around, okay? So there you go. So we never did it then. So we finally did it. But you may say, I'd like to do that. You may say, that's not my thing. I'm not interested in being in a basket high up in the air looking down. I'm not into heights, and I don't like the idea that there's an open fire, so I'm going to pass on that. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you know exactly the new thing that you would like to do as a couple. You've talked about doing it, but you've never done it. And so now is the time to do it. Listening to this episode today is your perfect invitation, your perfect nudge, your perfect motivation to finally do it. Or maybe you don't know. Like you just don't even know what would we do? What could we do that's new? And I want to say to you, it does not have to be like a trip to Mexico or special vacation. It can be, nothing wrong with that at all, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be time consuming. It doesn't have to be expensive. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. You could go like on a hike that you just have never taken before. Maybe you've gone on hikes, but you've never gone on this particular one. Maybe there's a place, like a weekend trip, like you always wanted to go. Maybe your wife's talked about it. Your husband said, I'd like to go to this place. Maybe there's a show, a game, a festival that you would like to go to, but you haven't. Do something new. Or maybe you want to do something in terms of your intimacy, like an intimate evening where you try something you haven't done before. And now I can just hear all of the voices. Like what? What do you mean, Rick? No, I'm not falling for that one. Too smart, too wise, been around too long. That's why I'm giving you my lessons learned. Here's a lesson I've learned in life. Not going to talk about that stuff publicly in any way. You can fill in the blank there. I'll give you a couple of guardrails. One thing I would say is you should, of course, both of you should talk about it and have agreement that, yeah, let's try that. Let's do something new. It shouldn't be one person sort of forcing the other. At the same time, just to balance that out, I would say, short of something, that just totally is not right, immoral, you should be open to trying something once. Now you could say, I don't know if I'm going to like this or be interested in this. I'll give it the old college try. I'll try it once. And afterwards you might say, I like that. Didn't think I would, but I did. Or you might say, yep, didn't think I would like it. Didn't like it. Don't want to do it again. Okay, no problem. So an openness to try something new, but an agreement that we'll be in agreement on it. We'll also make sure that we, are willing to try something once, but then we'll have to reevaluate and reassess after that. How about that? Here's the thing. Romantic passion is what brought you together as a couple. I mean, there's certainly various aspects to a loving relationship that need attention besides the romance. Like communication, for instance, comes to mind, and many other compromise. There are things that, you need to address in any relationship to make it stronger and to make it greater. But this is Valentine's Day, and so this is the romance day. So we're focusing on the romance. But let's just say this. There's no priority more important than your romantic connection. There may be ones as important, but none more important, because think about this. It is the romantic part of your relationship that sets it apart from every other relationship in your life. You have all kinds of relationships with all kinds of people, but you only have one intimate relationship with your spouse in your marriage. That is unique. So the uniqueness there gives it a certain priority. And because it has that special place and should be a priority, you need to make sure that you keep it fresh and exciting. You need to make sure that you are not falling into some type of dull, boring rut. And you may say, hey, we've been married for a while and we've done, a lot of things. Yeah, I've been married for a while too. Chances are longer than you've been married. And we just did something new last Valentine, so you can still do something new even if you've been married for a while. And you may say, well, I can't think of anything. Well, that's a perfect thing to sit down like tonight on Valentine's and talk about. Like, we need to get this thing fresh and exciting. We need to spice it up a little here. So what's something new that we could do that we haven't done? Or maybe it's something we've talked about, but we've never done it. Or maybe we haven't talked about it and we need to. What's the one thing that you can do to supercharge your love life? It's doing something new. Something different. Something special. Something out of the ordinary. And when you do that, it does supercharge your love life. It does. It gives it a jolt of energy. It gives it a turbo boost of power. And it's the kind of thing that does move you up a level in your relationship. And if things have just become a bit routine, then it's what's needed. It's what's needed, and it's what's helpful so that you can have a greater relationship and a greater marriage. So this may be too late for this Valentine's, but again, Valentine's is just the day we focus on it. Your marriage, your intimate relationship should last all year long. So this is just a good little step off point, a little motivational point, a little launching pad as you move forward and hopefully move upward into a higher level. Hope this has been helpful to you. Hope you put it into practice. Happy Valentine's Day.
You've been listening to the Point of Impact podcast with Rick McDaniel. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to you joining us for our next episode.